The temporary neural link had shown Marcus wonders beyond imagination, but it had also revealed something that chilled him to the bone. Through the forest mind, he had glimpsed the Kailari's true capabilities, and they were preparing for war, on a scale that would make the Federation's worst nightmares seem like pleasant dreams. "Commander," Marcus said as he struggled to his feet, "we need to contact the Endeavor immediately, not to call for reinforcements, to warn them away." "Explain," Commander Zixtal demanded, though his compound eyes showed he was beginning to understand the magnitude of their situation. Marcus looked around at the peaceful forest clearing, seeing it now with enhanced perception. What had appeared to be natural growth patterns were actually sophisticated defensive positions. The very air they breathed was monitored by microscopic organisms that could analyze their genetic structure and emotional state. They weren't in a forest. They were inside a living weapon system that had been studying them since the moment they arrived. "The Kailari aren't just defending this world," Marcus explained. "They're part of something much larger, a confederation of biological civilizations that spans multiple sectors, and they're about to go to war with every mechanical civilization in the galaxy." Cathari's expression remained neutral, but Marcus caught the subtle shift in his bioluminescent patterns that indicated surprise. "You saw more than we intended, Marcus Chen. The temporary link was supposed to be limited to local consciousness. Local consciousness that extends across 17 star systems," Marcus replied. "I saw the growing fleets, Cathari. Ships that are alive, weapons that evolve, entire worlds being converted into military assets. You're not preparing to defend Kailara. You're preparing to attack the Federation." The revelation hit the remaining team members like a physical blow. Everything they had believed about their situation was wrong. They weren't dealing with an isolated world defending itself against invasion. They were the advanced scouts of a war that had already begun. They just hadn't realized it yet. "Why?" Commander Zixtal asked. "If your confederation is so powerful, why haven't you attacked before now?" "Because we hoped coexistence was possible," Cathari replied. "For 300 years we have watched mechanical civilization spread across the galaxy like a plague, consuming worlds, destroying ecosystems, treating living planets as nothing more than resources to be exploited. We offered alliance, trade, mutual cooperation. Every time we were dismissed as primitives or threats to be eliminated. Dekmar, now fully integrated into the forest mind, spoke with the voice of bitter experience. The Vorthak response was typical. When offered partnership, they chose slavery. When offered trade, they chose theft. When offered coexistence, they chose genocide." Marcus realized he was witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. Two completely different approaches to civilization were about to collide, and the outcome would determine the future of every species in the galaxy. The mechanical civilizations like the Federation believed in dominance through technology, expansion through conquest, progress through consumption. The biological civilizations believed in harmony through integration, growth through cooperation, advancement through symbiosis. "How long before the war begins?" Marcus asked. "It has already begun," Cathari replied. 3 days ago, Federation forces attacked a Kailari seed ship in the Proxima Centauri system. Yesterday, a Vextar colony was consumed by what your people call aggressive terraforming organisms. 2 hours ago, a Zephyrian trade convoy was disabled by weapons that phase-shifted through their shields. The chronology made Marcus sick. While his team had been stumbling through Kailari defenses, thinking they were dealing with a local threat, the first shots of a galactic war had already been fired, and from what he had seen through the forest mind, the mechanical civilizations were hopelessly outmatched. "We have to stop this," Marcus said. "There has to be a way to prevent total war." "There is." Elder Nimtara's voice drifted from the trees above them. Marcus looked up to see her descending on a platform of living wood, her bioluminescent patterns cycling through complex sequences that conveyed emotions too subtle for translation. "But it requires sacrifice from both sides." She touched down, beside Cathari, and studied the Federation team with ancient eyes. "Marcus Chen speaks truth when he says evolution cannot be forced, but neither can it be prevented forever. Your mechanical civilizations have reached a dead end. You consume faster than you create, Destroy more than you build. Take more than you give. This path leads only to extinction. Commander Zixtal's tactical training reasserted itself. What do you propose? A test, Elder Nimtara replied. Your Federation believes that mechanical technology represents the pinnacle of advancement. We believe that biological integration represents true evolution. Let us see which approach produces superior results. Marcus felt a chill of premonition. What kind of test? Single combat between champions. One representative from each philosophy, fighting with the best their civilization can offer. The losing side accepts integration into the winning civilization's approach. The proposal was audacious beyond belief. Elder Nimtara was suggesting that the fate of billions of beings across hundreds of worlds be decided by a single fight. It violated every principle of Federation diplomacy, every concept of civilized conflict resolution. It was also probably their only chance to avoid a war that would consume the galaxy. Impossible, Commander Zixtal declared. The Federation Council would never agree to such terms. Then the war continues, Elder Nimtara said simply, and your mechanical civilizations lose. We have been preparing for this conflict for centuries, while you have been preparing for wars against enemies like yourselves. You have no defenses against living weapons, no strategies for fighting opponents who can think and adapt faster than your computers. Marcus looked at his teammates and saw the same terrible understanding in their eyes. The Kailari weren't bluffing. They had already demonstrated the ability to disable Federation technology with primitive weapons. If they could do that on a galactic scale with centuries of preparation behind them, the war would be over before it truly began. Who would serve as champions? Marcus asked. For the biological civilizations, one who has achieved perfect integration with the forest mind while retaining individual consciousness. For the mechanical civilizations, one who represents the pinnacle of technological enhancement while maintaining biological heritage. The implications were clear. The Kailari champion would be someone like Thekmar after his transformation was complete, enhanced by biological integration but still fundamentally themselves. The Federation champion would need to be someone enhanced by the best technology their civilization could offer, while remaining essentially organic. Marcus felt the weight of destiny settling on his shoulders as he realized who Elder Nimtara was looking at. You want me to be the Federation champion, he said. You are the only one among your people who has experienced both perspectives, the only one who can fight for mechanical civilization while truly understanding what biological civilization offers. Her bioluminescent patterns shifted to colors Marcus was beginning to recognize as hopeful. And you are human. Commander. Zixtal's compound eyes widened as he understood the significance of that statement. The prophecy. The ancient texts that speak of a species that would bridge the gap between machine and biology. Elder Nimtara nodded. Humans are young, but they possess something unique among mechanical civilizations. The ability to adapt, to integrate, to become more than they were while remaining essentially themselves. If any species can survive the transition from mechanical to biological civilization, it is yours. Marcus felt the crushing responsibility of representing not just the Federation, but the entire future of human development. If he won, mechanical civilization would continue its path of technological dominance. If he lost, humanity would undergo forced evolution into something entirely new. But there was a third possibility that neither side had considered. What if the test proved that neither approach was inherently superior? What if the future lay, not in choosing between mechanical and biological civilization, but in finding a way to combine the best of both? Marcus looked at Elder Nimtara and made the decision that would change everything. I accept, but I have one condition. Commander Zixtal's decision came faster than Marcus expected, though not in the direction he had hoped. I need to consult with my superiors, the Thraxian declared. This decision is beyond my authority. Marcus felt his heart sink. In Federation protocol, that phrase was usually code for stall until the cavalry arrives. He caught Cathari's expression darkening and knew the Kalari warrior had reached the same conclusion. Your ship carries quantum communication arrays, Cathari observed. You could contact your superiors instantly. The fact that you choose delay suggests preparation for deception. I am following proper procedure. You are following the same procedure used by the Vorthak commander who promised peaceful negotiations while secretly calling for reinforcements. Kithari's voice carried harmonics that made the nearby trees rustle in response. His bones now feed the great mother tree in the eastern forest. The standoff might have continued indefinitely, but Thekmar chose that moment to regain consciousness. The Karathi warrior's metal-infused skin had taken on a blue tinge where the arrow's energy had spread, creating patterns that looked disturbingly like infection vectors. The burning, Thekmar gasped. It's spreading. I can feel it in my neural pathways. Marcus knelt beside the wounded warrior, studying the progression of the blue energy. What he saw made his blood run cold. The patterns weren't random. They were following the specific neural architecture that gave Karathi their enhanced physical abilities. It's not just disabling his healing factor, Marcus realized. It's rewriting his nervous system. Kithari nodded approvingly. The human sees clearly. The arrow carries biological programming designed to integrate with Karathi neural architecture. Your friend will not die, but he will change. Change how? Commander Zixtal demanded. He will become like us, connected to the forest mind, able to see the world as we see it. Kithari's tone suggested this was a gift rather than a curse. Many of our people were once members of other species who chose integration over isolation. The implications hit Marcus like a hammer blow. The Kelari weren't just defending their world. They were assimilating their attackers, converting them into willing members of their collective consciousness. It was a fate that many species would consider worse than death. Remove the arrow, Commander Zixtal ordered. Immediately. I cannot, Kithari replied. The integration process has begun. Interrupting it now would cause permanent neural damage. Marcus looked at Thekmar's face and saw something that terrified him more than the prospect of death. The Karathi warrior's expression was changing, becoming calmer, more peaceful. The desperate fear in his eyes was being replaced by something that looked disturbingly like contentment. It feels better, Thekmar whispered. The pain is fading. I can hear voices? No, not voices. Something deeper. The song of growing things. The whisper of wind through leaves. His metal-infused skin began to show patches of green, as if plant matter was growing beneath the surface. It's beautiful. Fight it, Commander Zixtal ordered. Resist the integration. But Thekmar was no longer listening to his commander. His attention had turned inward to whatever the arrow was doing to his mind. When he spoke again, his voice carried the same harmonic quality as Kithari's. I understand now. We came here as conquerors, but we are the ones who need to learn. The Federation sees the galaxy as a collection of resources to be exploited. But that's not what it is at all. Marcus watched in fascination and horror as one of his teammates underwent real-time conversion to an alien worldview. The process was clearly irreversible. Thekmar was becoming something new, something that was part Karathi and part Kelari and entirely beyond Federation understanding. How many of you are converted members of other species? Marcus asked Kithari. Perhaps 30%. The Vorthak contributed several thousand individuals. The Nemhai were more resistant, but eventually a few hundred joined us willingly. Even some humans have chosen integration over separation. Humans? But this is first contact, official first contact, Kithari corrected. Your species has been exploring this region for decades. 3 of your exploration vessels have found their way to Kelara over the past 20 years. Most of their crews chose to leave after learning what we are, but several individuals decided to stay. Marcus felt the ground shifting beneath his feet again. Everything the Federation thought it knew about this region of space was wrong. They weren't making first contact with a primitive civilization. They were stumbling into a carefully managed relationship that had been developing for decades. I want to speak with them, Marcus said. The humans who chose to stay. Kithari considered this request for a moment before nodding. That can be arranged, but first your commander must make a choice. Will you accept our offer of peaceful trade, or must we take more direct action to protect our world? Commander Zixtal looked at his dwindling team. They had started with 12 members and were now down to 8 functional personnel, with 1 undergoing involuntary conversion to the enemy's worldview. The tactical situation was hopeless, but admitting that would mean the end of his career. I need guarantees, the Thraxian said finally. Proof that you can deliver on your promises of technology exchange. Kithari smiled and gestured toward the forest. Marcus Chen, would you be willing to undergo a temporary integration? Nothing permanent, just enough to let you experience our perspective firsthand. The offer hung in the air like a challenge. Marcus looked at Thekmar, who was now sitting up and examining his transforming skin with obvious wonder rather than horror. The Karathi warrior seemed healthier and more alert than he had ever been, despite the alien influence spreading through his nervous system. What would it involve? Marcus asked. A single spore inhaled rather than injected. It would create a temporary neural link to the forest mind, allowing you to see our world as we see it. The effects would fade in a few hours, leaving you unchanged but informed. Commander Zixtal moved to block Marcus from accepting. Absolutely not. I forbid it, but Marcus was already walking toward Cathari. His xenoarchaeological training had taught him that understanding required risk, and this was the greatest opportunity for understanding he had ever encountered. Do it, he said. Cathari reached into a pouch on his belt and withdrew what looked like a flower bud that pulsed with soft light. When he crushed it between his fingers, luminescent spores drifted toward Marcus like glowing snow. Marcus inhaled deeply and felt the spores enter his lungs. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the world exploded into connections he had never imagined possible. He could feel the vast network of roots beneath his feet, carrying information at light speed across continents. He could sense the consciousness of every tree, every plant, every living thing in the forest. And behind it all, he could perceive the collective mind of the Kailari themselves. Not a hive mind that subsumed individuality, but a symphony of consciousness where each voice remained distinct while contributing to a greater harmony. Through the forest mind, Marcus saw Kalara as it truly was. Not a single world, but a living entity that spanned multiple solar systems. The Kailari had learned to grow ships that could travel between stars while remaining connected to their home consciousness. They had established colonies that were really extensions of their original forest, creating a network of living worlds that shared knowledge and resources across vast distances. And they were not alone. Marcus perceived other species that had achieved similar integration with their home worlds, forming a loose confederation of biological civilizations that existed parallel to the mechanical federation of traditional spacefaring races. The Kailari were offering humanity a chance to join something far greater than the Federation had ever dreamed possible. When the vision faded, Marcus found himself on his knees, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what he had experienced. He looked up at Cathari with new understanding. "You're not offering us trade," he said. "You're offering us evolution." The return journey took half the time, with Cathari leading Marcus through paths that definitely hadn't existed on the way up. The forest was rearranging itself around them, creating shortcuts that bent normal geometry. Marcus tried not to think too hard about the implications of a planetary ecosystem that could manipulate space-time. When they reached the clearing where the Federation team waited, Marcus found the situation had deteriorated significantly. Thekmar was unconscious, the blue energy from the arrow having spread throughout his circulatory system in patterns that looked disturbingly like circuitry. The remaining Karathi warriors had formed a defensive perimeter, but their usual confidence was gone. They kept glancing at the trees as if expecting attack from any direction. Commander Zixtal's compound eyes tracked Marcus as he emerged from the forest. "Report, Specialist Chen. What have you learned about our captors?" Marcus chose his words carefully. "They're not our captors, Commander. They're our judges." "Explain." Before Marcus could respond, Cathari stepped forward and spoke in perfect standard Galactic, his accent crisp and precise. "Commander Zixtal of the Federation vessel Endeavor, you are charged with violation of 732 articles of interstellar law, including unauthorized planetary invasion, theft of sovereign resources, and conspiracy to commit genocide." The effect on the team was immediate. Several weapons were drawn, but Cathari showed no concern. If anything, he seemed amused by their aggressive postures. "You speak our language," Commander Zixtal said, his tactical mind clearly struggling to process this development. "I speak 47 languages, Commander. My specialization is xenolinguistics, with a focus on spacefaring cultures. I hold advanced degrees from the University of Greater Andromeda, the Centauri Institute of Technology, and your own Federation Academy on Luna." The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus watched understanding dawn on the faces of his teammates. This wasn't a primitive warrior. This was a scholar who could have taught courses at any Federation university. Impossible, Medic Gurvok whispered. You're Bronze Age. We scanned your technology levels. Cathari's laugh was like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Bronze Age? I suppose technically that's accurate. We do work primarily in bronze alloys, though ours are rather more sophisticated than what you typically encounter. He gestured to his armor, which Marcus now realized was covered in intricate patterns that definitely weren't decorative. This particular alloy can withstand direct hits from fusion weapons while remaining flexible enough for full mobility. Marcus stepped between the two groups before the situation could escalate further. Commander, we need to talk, privately. There will be no private conversations, Cathari interrupted. Your Federation has a history of making promises in private that they break in public. All discussions will be witnessed. Commander Zixtal's forearms moved in the Thraxian gesture for frustrated acceptance. Very well. Specialist Chen, provide your assessment. Marcus took a deep breath. The Kalari aren't what we thought they were. They're not primitive, they're not helpless, and they're definitely not going to let us strip mine their world. One primitive civilization cannot stand against the Federation, Commander Zixtal declared. They've already done it 7 times, Marcus replied. 7 different spacefaring civilizations have tried to conquer Kailara in the past 1,000 years. The bones of their crews are fertilizing trees that are bigger than our capital ships. The team's reaction was immediate and predictable. Denials, protests, demands for proof. Marcus let them voice their disbelief before continuing. The arrow in Thekmar's chest. It was specifically designed to counter Karathi physiology. They have arrows for every known spacefaring species. The forest itself is a living weapon system that can manipulate space-time. They've been watching us for months, learning our weaknesses, preparing counters for every advantage we think we have. Scout Ralseth, one of the surviving Zephyrians, shimmered slightly as she tested her phase abilities. I can still phase through matter. Their weapons can't touch me if I'm incorporeal. Cathari reached into his quiver and withdrew a green arrow that seemed to bend light around itself. Please, by all means, try to phase. I'm curious to see if the theoretical models are accurate. The scout's eyes widened as she recognized the implications. If they had developed weapons specifically to counter phase shifting, then her primary survival ability was useless. How? Commander Zixtal demanded. How could a Bronze Age civilization develop such technologies? Because we're not Bronze Age, Cathari explained patiently. We're post-technological. Your species are still trapped in the primitive mindset of dominating nature. Through crude machinery, we learn to cooperate with nature to become part of it. Our bronze is a living metal that grows and adapts. Our wood is more sophisticated than your strongest battle armor. Our primitive forest has computational power that exceeds your largest AI systems. Marcus watched his teammates struggle with the concept. They had been raised to believe that technological advancement meant bigger engines, stronger weapons, more complex machinery. The idea that a civilization could advance in the opposite direction, becoming more sophisticated by becoming more integrated with natural systems, was beyond their experience. Prove it, Commander Zixtal challenged. Cathari smiled and placed his hand on the nearest tree. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the forest around them began to change. Trees that had been solid became translucent, revealing a vast network of glowing conduits that carried information at light speed. The ground itself became transparent, showing underground root systems that formed geometric patterns too complex for any organic evolution. Above them, the canopy rearranged itself into what was unmistakably a massive sensor array focused on the sky. We have been tracking your vessel since it entered our system, Cathari said as the forest returned to its normal appearance. We know its exact position, its defensive capabilities, and the composition of its crew. We have already grown the weapons necessary to disable it should you choose violence. The demonstration had its intended effect. Marcus could see the fear in his teammates' eyes as they realized they weren't dealing with primitives armed with sticks and stones. They were facing a civilization that had weaponized an entire planet. What do you want? Commander Zixtal asked, his voice tight with controlled panic. The same thing we wanted from your mining operation. Leave our world in peace. The quintessium deposits will remain where they are. We have no use for them, but we will not allow others to strip mine our world to obtain them. Marcus stepped forward. There might be another way. The Kalari are interested in some of our technologies. Information systems, communication networks, data preservation techniques. Perhaps we could arrange an exchange. Cathari's expression shifted to something that might have been approval. The human shows wisdom. We are not opposed to trade, only to exploitation. Commander Zixtal's tactical mind was clearly racing through possibilities. What kind of trade? Knowledge for knowledge. Your computational theories in exchange for our biological engineering techniques. Your faster-than-light communication systems in exchange for our living ship technologies. The offer hung in the air like a lifeline. Marcus could see his teammates beginning to grasp the incredible opportunity being presented. Alliance with the Kalari wouldn't just mean access to Quintessium. It would mean a complete revolution in Federation technology. But first, they had to prove they could be trusted. And that would require them to fundamentally change how they thought about progress, power, and their place in the galaxy. Marcus looked at Commander Zixtal and saw the weight of decision settling on his shoulders. The next words out of the Thraxian's mouth would determine whether they left Kalara as friends, prisoners, or fertilizer for the forest floor. The Kalari warrior who had introduced himself as Cathari led Marcus away from the rest of the Federation team under circumstances that could charitably be called a temporary ceasefire. Commander Zixtal had protested, but when more Kalari emerged from seemingly empty forest, at least 30 warriors with those devastating bioweapons, even his tactical genius suggested that diplomacy might be preferable to immediate extinction. Marcus followed Cathari through paths that seemed to shift and change as they walked. What appeared to be solid ground would suddenly reveal hidden passages, while seemingly impassable thickets would part like curtains. The forest itself was alive in ways that defied easy explanation. "Your friend with the metal skin will live," Cathari said without turning around. "The arrow is designed to disable, not kill. We are not monsters, Marcus Chen. But you could kill him if you wanted to. Of course, we have arrows for killing each of your species. The red ones dissolve crystal bone. The green ones disrupt phase shifting. The purple ones prevent cellular regeneration entirely." Cathari paused beside a tree that was easily 50 meters in diameter. "We have been watching your people for much longer than you realize." Marcus ran his hand along the tree's bark, feeling the same energy signature he had detected in the arrows. "This whole forest is connected, isn't it? It's one massive organism." Cathari's cat-like features arranged themselves into what Marcus was beginning to recognize as a smile. "Now you begin to understand. Your Federation sees individual trees, individual Kailari, individual threats. You do not see the forest itself." They climbed a spiral staircase that had been grown rather than carved into the tree's trunk. As they ascended, Marcus caught glimpses of an entire civilization hidden within the forest canopy. Bridges of living wood connected massive trees, while bioluminescent pods provided light and warmth. Kailari moved through their arboreal city with the fluid grace of beings who had evolved in 3 dimensions. "How many of you are there?" Marcus asked. "On this continent? Perhaps 50,000? On the other 6 continents? Perhaps 50 million. Cathari's tone was casual, but Marcus felt his stomach drop. The Federation had estimated the global Kailari population at maybe 10,000, based on the small agricultural settlements they had observed from orbit. They emerged onto a platform near the tree's crown, where an elderly Kailari waited. This one was clearly ancient. Her green skin had deepened to a rich emerald, and bioluminescent patterns covered her arms and face like living tattoos. When she moved, the patterns shifted and pulsed in complex rhythms. "Elder Nimtara," Cathari said with obvious reverence. "I bring the human who sees." Elder Nimtara studied Marcus with eyes that seemed to hold depths he couldn't fathom. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that made his bones vibrate. "Marcus Chen of the humans. You are the first of your kind to recognize what we are." "What are you?" Marcus asked. "We are what your species might become, given time and wisdom." She gestured to the forest spreading out below them. 10,000. Years ago, we were much like you, individual beings struggling against nature, using crude tools to bend the world to our will. But we learned that cooperation is stronger than domination. Marcus watched as a group of young Kalari tended to what appeared to be a nursery of growing weapons. They sang to the developing bows and arrows, their voices weaving together in complex harmonies that seemed to guide the weapon's growth. You're not just using biotechnology, he realized. You are biotechnology. You've integrated with your ecosystem so completely that you're no longer separate from it. Elder Nimtara's bioluminescent patterns brightened. Your understanding brings hope, Marcus Chen. When your Federation first arrived, we feared they would be like the others. Others? The Vorthak came 300 years ago. They saw our world as you did, primitive beings to be exploited. They established mining operations, enslaved our people, strip-mined our forests. The patterns on her skin shifted to angry reds and oranges. It took us 50 years to drive them away. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the altitude. You fought other spacefaring species before? 7 different invasions over the past millennium. Each one saw us as we wished to be seen, primitive and helpless. Each one learned too late that appearances can deceive. She gestured to the weapons being grown below. We have arrows designed to kill every known spacefaring species, even a few we have not encountered yet. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. The Federation had waltzed into what amounted to a carefully maintained trap. Every assessment they had made, every strategic decision, had been based on deliberately misleading information. The Kalari had wanted them to see a Bronze Age civilization, because that made the eventual revelation more devastating. But you're not attacking us with full force, Marcus observed. You could have killed my entire team in the first few minutes. Because of you, Elder Nimtara said simply. When our forest mind touched yours, we sensed something different. Most of your kind think in straight lines, problem, solution, implementation. But you think in circles like we do. You see connections where others see only separate things. Marcus thought about his years studying dead civilizations, always trying to understand how they had seen the world rather than imposing his own perspective on their artifacts. It was a skill that had made him a good xenoarchaeologist, but apparently, it was also something the Kalari could recognize and value. What do you want from us, he asked. The same thing we wanted from the Vorthak, the Nemhai, the Kalari, and all the others. Leave our world in peace, and we will let you live. And if we refuse? Elder Nimtara's patterns shifted to deep blues and purples. Then you will join the others in the deep caves where their bones feed the roots of our forest. Marcus looked out over the vast canopy, suddenly understanding that he was seeing the graveyard of multiple spacefaring civilizations. The massive trees weren't just homes. They were monuments to the folly of technological arrogance. How many ships have you captured? 17 major vessels, perhaps 100 smaller craft. Their crews learned too late that energy shields mean nothing against weapons that grow inside them. She gestured to one particularly massive tree in the distance. That one feeds on the bones of 5,000 Vorthak, who thought their power armor made them invincible. The casual way she mentioned such massive casualties made Marcus realize that the Kalari weren't just defending their world. They were apex predators who had learned to hunt starships. Every technological advantage his species had developed, the Kalari had already encountered and learned to counter. Why are you telling me this? Marcus asked. Because you have a choice to make, Marcus Chen. You can return to your people and warn them. Tell them what they face if they choose to fight. Or you can help them understand that cooperation is possible. What kind of cooperation? Elder Nimtara's patterns shifted to warm golds and greens. Your people have technologies we find interesting, not your weapons or your engines, but your computers, your communication systems, your ability to preserve and share information across vast distances. We could teach you to grow ships that live and breathe, weapons that adapt and evolve, cities that nurture rather than consume. Marcus felt the weight of decision settling on his shoulders. He was being offered a chance to broker an alliance that could revolutionize human civilization, or he could warn the Federation to flee before they triggered a response that would make their defeat at Kaelara look like a minor skirmish. But first he had to get back to his team alive, and he was beginning to suspect that would be the easy part. Marcus Chen had always been told that humans were fragile. Every species in the Galactic Federation said so. The Zephyrians with their crystalline bones, the Karathi with their metal-infused skin, the Vextar with their rapid healing abilities. They all looked at humans like delicate flowers that might wilt at any moment. That's why Marcus found himself laughing as the Karathi warrior named Tekmar writhed on the ground, a primitive wooden arrow protruding from his supposedly indestructible torso. The irony wasn't lost on him that the most technologically advanced beings in the galaxy had been brought low by what amounted to a pointed stick. The mission had started 3 days ago when the Federation received a distress signal from the primitive world of Kylara. The planet's inhabitants, the Kylari, were barely past their Bronze Age, but they possessed something invaluable, a rare mineral called quintessium that could power faster than light engines for centuries. A mining operation had been established with strict non-interference protocols, but something had gone wrong. Marcus had volunteered for the rescue mission despite being the only human in a squad of 12. The others included 4 Karathi warriors, 3 Zephyrian scouts, 3 Vextar medics, and 1 Thraxian commander. Each species brought their unique advantages. The Karathi were nearly indestructible. The Zephyrians could phase through solid matter. The Vextar could heal from almost any wound. And the Thraxians possessed tactical genius that bordered on precognition. Humans brought nothing special to the table, or so everyone believed. The team had landed on Kalara's northern continent where the mining facility had gone silent. What they found was a massacre. The automated mining equipment lay in ruins, torn apart by what appeared to be primitive weapons. Scorch marks on the walls suggested the miners had fought back with energy weapons, but somehow the Bronze Age Kalari had overwhelmed advanced technology. Commander Zixtal, a towering Thraxian with 4 arms and compound eyes, had dismissed the threat. Primitive beings with crude weapons, he had declared. We shall sweep through their settlements and locate our missing personnel within hours. That confidence had lasted exactly 37 minutes. The Kalari had been waiting for them. Not a handful of frightened primitives, but an organized army that moved through their forest with deadly precision. They struck from the trees, from underground tunnels, from positions that should have been impossible to hide in. Their weapons were crude, spears, arrows, stone clubs, but they wielded them with supernatural skill. The first to fall had been Scout Velshan, a Zephyrian who had phased through a tree trunk only to find 3 Kalari warriors waiting on the other side with spears positioned exactly where she would emerge. The second was Medic Hertuk, whose vaunted healing abilities meant nothing when a Kylari archer put an arrow through his brain. Now, Tekmar lay screaming as the wooden arrow in his chest pulsed with some kind of energy that prevented his metal-infused skin from healing. The Kalari had somehow learned to craft weapons that could hurt species that should have been immune to primitive attacks. Marcus knelt beside the wounded Karathi, studying the arrow with professional interest. His background wasn't military. He was a xenoarchaeologist brought along to study Kalari culture. But growing up on the frontier colony of New Texas had taught him a few things about dealing with hostile situations. Don't move, Marcus told Tekmar as he examined the arrow. This isn't just wood. See these markings? They're not decorative. The arrow shaft was covered in intricate carvings that seemed to shift and move in his peripheral vision. More concerning was the way the arrowhead glowed with a faint blue light that pulsed in rhythm with Tekmar's hearts. Can you remove it? Commander Zixtal demanded, his tactical mind clearly struggling to process how his superior forces were being decimated by primitive weapons. Marcus ran his fingers along the arrow shaft, feeling the strange energy emanating from it. Maybe, but I need to understand what we're dealing with first. A rustling in the trees above made everyone look up. 3 Kylari warriors descended on rope vines, moving with fluid grace despite their bulky bronze armor. They were humanoid but clearly alien, taller than humans with elongated limbs and faces that combined features of cats and birds. Their skin was a deep green that shifted to brown as they moved, natural camouflage that explained how they had remained hidden so long. The lead Kylari warrior carried a bow that hummed with the same energy as the arrow in Tekmar's chest. When he spoke, his voice carried the melodic quality of wind chimes, but his words were clearly threatening despite the universal translator's attempts to render them in standard galactic. You invaders will leave our world, the Kalari said. or you will join your friends in the feeding pits." Commander Zixtal's forearms moved to his weapons, but Marcus held up a hand. "Wait, they're not just primitive hunters. Look at their equipment. The Kalari weapons weren't crude wood and stone after all. The bows were carved from some kind of living wood that pulsed with bioluminescent veins. The arrows in their quivers glowed with different colors: blue, red, green, purple. Each color likely had a different effect." "You study our craft, Invader," the lead Kalari observed, his cat-like eyes fixed on Marcus. "You see what your metal friends cannot." Marcus nodded slowly. "Your weapons are beautiful. And terrifying. How long have you been preparing for us?" The Kalari warrior's expression shifted to something that might have been surprise. "You speak as one who knows warcraft, not like the others who think strength of body is strength of spirit." That's when Marcus understood. The Federation had made a critical error in their assessment of the Kalari. They had seen a Bronze Age civilization and assumed primitive minds to match primitive tools, but the Kalari had been watching. They had studied their invaders, learned their weaknesses, and crafted weapons specifically designed to kill, beings that thought themselves invulnerable. The arrow in Tekmar's chest wasn't just a weapon, it was a masterpiece of biological engineering designed to disrupt the Karathi's healing factor. The blue energy was some kind of toxin that prevented cellular regeneration. Marcus looked up at the Kalari warrior and made a decision that would change everything. "My name is Marcus Chen. I'm not here to invade your world. I want to understand it." The Kalari's expression shifted again, this time to what was unmistakably curiosity. "You are different from the others, Marcus Chen. Your spirit burns with different fire." Behind him, Marcus could hear Commander Zixtal muttering about proper first contact protocols and the dangers of negotiating with hostiles. But Marcus had spent years studying dead civilizations, and he knew what happened when superior technology met determined resistance. The technologically advanced side usually won, but not always. And when they lost, it was usually because they had underestimated their opponents. The Kalari hadn't just prepared for this invasion, they had been preparing for centuries. Elder Nimtara's bioluminescent patterns shifted to cautious curiosity. "Name your condition, Marcus Chen." "If I win, the biological civilizations don't just retreat. They work with us to find a middle path. If I lose, the Federation doesn't just surrender. They're given the chance to evolve gradually, voluntarily, rather than through forced conversion." Marcus looked directly into her ancient eyes. "This isn't about proving one side right and the other wrong. It's about finding a way for both approaches to coexist and learn from each other." The forest around them seemed to hold its breath. Marcus could feel the attention of countless minds focusing on this moment through the vast network of consciousness that connected the Kalari to their world and beyond. His proposal was being evaluated by intelligences that spanned star systems. "Acceptable," Elder Nimtara said finally. "But understand, if you lose, your people will still be offered integration. Some may choose it willingly once they see what we can offer. And if I win, your people will be offered Federation membership. Some may choose our path once they see what we can achieve." Kithari made a sound that might have been laughter. "The human thinks like us, in circles rather than straight lines." "Very well, the terms are set. When will this test take place?" "Now," Commander Zixtal interrupted. "If we're going to stop a galactic war, we can't afford delay." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "Now I need time to prepare, to contact my superiors to..." "To what?" Elder Nimtara asked gently. "To request technological enhancements that would take months to implement. To train in combat techniques you've never studied. To become someone other than who you are." She had a point. Marcus was a xenoarchaeologist, not a warrior. His combat training consisted of basic self-defense courses and wilderness survival skills. Against a champion of biological civilization who had achieved perfect integration with living weapons and enhanced reflexes, he would last approximately 30 seconds. "This is madness," Commander Zixtal declared. "Marcus is a scholar, not a soldier. Send me instead." "No," Elder Nimtara replied firmly. "The human is the only acceptable choice. His mind has touched ours through the forest link. He alone can fight with true understanding of what he opposes." Marcus looked at his teammates and saw the same conclusion in their eyes. This was suicide. But it was also the only chance to prevent a war that would consume billions of lives. Sometimes the only choice was between certain death and almost certain death. "Who is my opponent?" he asked. "Me," said a voice from behind him. Marcus turned to see a figure emerging from the forest that made his breath catch. At first glance, it appeared to be human. Tall, athletic, with the kind of perfect proportions that suggested careful genetic optimization. But as it moved closer, Marcus could see the differences. The skin had a subtle green tinge that spoke of chlorophyll integration. The eyes held depth that seemed to contain entire ecosystems. The movements were too fluid, too perfectly coordinated, like someone who had never known the awkwardness of purely human reflexes. "I am Sarah Chen," the figure said, and Marcus felt his world shift beneath his feet. "That's impossible. Chen is my family name. You can't be your great-great-grandmother's sister," Sarah said with a smile that was achingly familiar despite the alien enhancements. "I was part of the exploration mission that found Kalara 20 years ago. When offered the choice between returning to a life of consuming dead worlds or staying to help nurture living ones, I chose integration." Marcus stared at her in shock. The Federation record showed that the exploration vessel Meridian had been lost with all hands in this sector 20 years ago. But apparently some of the crew had chosen a different fate. "You've been here for 2 decades. Time moves differently when you're connected to something eternal," Sarah replied. "I've learned to think like a forest, to grow like a tree, to adapt like evolution itself. I am still human, but I am also more than human." The implications were staggering. Sarah represented everything Marcus might become if he lost. Enhanced beyond normal human limitations, but fundamentally changed from what humanity had always been. She was walking proof that the integration process could preserve individual identity while expanding consciousness beyond anything the Federation had achieved. "The irony is appropriate," Elder Nimtara observed. 2 humans representing different paths for their species. One who has chosen evolution, one who represents tradition. Let us see which approach produces superior results. Marcus looked around the clearing and realized that preparations were already underway. The trees were rearranging themselves to form a natural amphitheater, while bioluminescent organisms emerged to provide lighting. This wasn't going to be a simple fight. It was going to be a spectacle witnessed by thousands of minds across the Biological Confederation. "What are the rules?" Marcus asked. "Simple," Sarah replied. "We each fight with the best our chosen civilization can provide. You may use any Federation technology you can access. I will use the biological enhancements the Kalari have given me. The fight continues until one of us yields or dies." Commander Zixtal stepped forward. "Marcus, you have access to the emergency combat enhancement protocols in your suit. Class 3 tactical boosters, enhanced reflexes, predictive combat algorithms. It's not much, but it's something." Marcus activated his suit's combat systems and felt the familiar surge of enhanced awareness as Federation technology interfaced with his nervous system. His reaction time increased by a factor of 3. His strength doubled. His tactical awareness expanded to process multiple threat vectors simultaneously. For a moment, he felt like he could take on the world. Then he looked at Sarah and realized how inadequate his enhancements were compared to hers. She moved like liquid mercury, her integrated biology allowing for movements that no purely human physiology could achieve. When she gestured, the forest responded. Vines emerged from the ground to create weapons. Flowers bloomed to provide tactical cover. Even the air itself seemed to shift to her advantage. "Ready?" she asked, and Marcus could hear the forest singing in harmony with her voice. Marcus drew the plasma sidearm that was standard issue for Federation personnel and felt its reassuring weight in his hand. The weapon could punch through battle armor and level small buildings. Against a biological opponent, it should have been overwhelming. Sarah smiled and held up her hand. As Marcus watched, her fingers elongated and hardened into claws that gleamed with an inner light. Her skin developed patterns that seemed to shift and flow like living camouflage. Most disturbing of all, her eyes began to glow with the same blue energy that had infected Thekmar's arrow wound. "You don't understand yet," she said gently. "This isn't about better weapons or stronger armor. It's about becoming something that doesn't need weapons or armor." She moved. Marcus had time to register that she was no longer where she had been standing, and then something hit him with the force of a falling tree. His enhanced reflexes let him roll with the impact and bring his weapon to bear. But Sarah was already gone, her living camouflage making her effectively invisible against the forest background. Marcus fired 3 plasma bolts at where his tactical systems calculated she should be, but hit nothing but trees. The ancient wood absorbed the energy without even smoldering, as if the entire forest was designed to neutralize advanced weaponry. A whisper of movement behind him made Marcus spin and fire, but again he hit nothing. Sarah's laughter drifted from somewhere in the canopy above, musical and completely without malice. "You're fighting the forest itself, Marcus." Her voice called from everywhere and nowhere. "Every tree, every root, every blade of grass is my ally. Your Federation technology makes you stronger, faster, smarter, but it doesn't make you part of something greater." Marcus realized with growing horror that he was going to lose. Not because Sarah was necessarily superior as an individual, but because she had access to resources he couldn't even comprehend. She wasn't just fighting him. She was fighting with the collective intelligence of an entire ecosystem. But as that realization settled over him, Marcus felt something unexpected. Not despair, but clarity. He finally understood what this test was really about.